Hi, seventh grade. Today we're getting ready to start a new chapter, chapter 19. Switch over to my notes here for just a minute. Here we go. Okay. We're going to be talking about the Cold War, the period from 1945 to 1991. Okay, so this is quite a few years, and this is going to actually be a pretty long chapter, but we're at the next to the last chapter in the book. So if we don't finish the last chapter, I'm okay with that, but we might have time for a little bit of it. Okay, I'm going to skip through these big idea slides. Our first major point is going to be post-war reconstruction. If you remember, you just took a test on World War II. We're finished with the war. We've signed peace treaties. We're done. Now what? We have devastation everywhere, and we've got to fix this, okay? So let's look at how we're going to reconstruct the world, okay? Again, I'm going to skip through these guiding questions. The notes are posted on our Google Classroom, so if you want to get the notes instead of having to write them down with the slides, that's probably a much better idea. Okay, so let's talk about recovery after World War II. We're going to look at a few different countries through this, the major players here, and then very short video today, okay? Very short. Okay, so let's look first at Western Europe, a couple countries there. Germany. Germany has been devastated by Hitler, by the Holocaust, by so many different things. And granted, a lot of it's their own doing. But the United States is going to do something and encourage other countries to do something that had never happened before in history that I can recall. And that is they're going to help their enemies rebuild. We've studied war all through history. Never has a nation that was attacked won a war and then turned around and helped those countries rebuild. But that's part of the American spirit, and that's what we did. We helped in Germany, and we also are going to help in Japan. We'll talk about that in a minute. In Germany, a man named Konrad Adenauer took over after the death of Hitler and the establishment of a new government. And they experienced a period of time that they call, I can't even pronounce it, it's in your book. It's called Wirtschaftswunder, which basically means economic miracle. They started installing free market principles that, like our country today, works on a free market where if you want to open a business, you can open a business. And if other companies want to kick you out of business, then they're going to have to do it by making something better and smarter than you do. So it's free market. It's a capitalistic system. That's what Germany established. And they experienced a really good, solid growth over the next several years, and they were able to establish a solid government. France was not quite as fortunate as Germany. I mean, they still had quite the devastation, not quite as much as Germany did, I don't think. But they established right after the end of World War II, the Fourth Republic. The first one had been established right before the French Revolution. They'd gone through three. Now they're ready for the Fourth Republic. They're trying again. Fourth Republic gets started. It's okay. It's not really doing great. And then they have a disaster in Vietnam. They had control of Vietnam for quite a while before World War II. And now Vietnam has, the French are trying to take back control of it. But there's enough forces in Vietnam under the guidance of communism from China and Russia that they move into Vietnam from the north, and they start taking over the country, and they defeat the French forces very quickly. So we end up finding that Vietnam is going to be divided between North Vietnam, controlled by the communists, and South Vietnam, where they're trying to establish a republic. And we'll see how that is going to lead into the Vietnam War. But back to France. France they're struggling because they're trying to take back these colonies, and the colonies don't want to go back. They want their independence. And then Charles de Gaulle, who had been the leader of Free France, he had gone actually to Britain during the war and had established the Free French, trying to get France free of German control. He steps in and establishes the Fifth Republic. This Fifth Republic is still in charge in France. They do have a republic government now, although they are highly socialistic. Some areas of France have as much as 60% unemployment as a result of their socialism that they've installed in their country. Workers pay an average of 44% of their income in taxes. You think about that. For every $10 you make $10 an hour, $4.40 of that would go to the government, and $5.60 would go to you. So really, if you're making $10 an hour, you're really making just over $5. So it's a really difficult way to live. Okay. Britain went into World War II as a world power, great country, very powerful in control of Europe. But as the war is ending, many of these territories that they're holding around the world start to gain their independence, including countries like India, which they have possessed it's been a British possession for a long time. They're getting their independence. Burma's getting their independence. Countries in Africa are getting their independence. And Britain finds itself sitting back and going, we're going to play a supporting role. Now they're our allies. Certainly Britain has been one of our allies from the early days of World War I, and even before that. But they're going to find themselves at this point playing a supporting role in the world stage. They're no longer the main actor on stage. They're just one of the supporters. Let's talk about Japan. Japan, of course, is devastated by the dropping of 2 bombs at Nagasaki and Hiroshima. But they General MacArthur stays there. Douglas MacArthur. He stays there and helps them build a constitution and a stable government. He helps them establish capitalistic principles, democracy. Eventually they build what they call their Liberal Democratic Party. That is really, it's a type of republic just like ours. He helps them build an industrial base, which will lead them into becoming one of the foremost countries in the automobile industry. And then from that industrial base, they will build other technologies that today we all know that Japanese products are some of the best in the world. In television, in radio, in computers, so many parts of our technology come out of Japan and the brilliant minds that are there. But it all started here with us as United States citizens being willing to go in and help the Japanese and help them rebuild. Today, they are one of our biggest allies, and they no longer have a standing army of any sort. All right, so one of the ways we did this, stabilization and growth, this is letter B, big letter B if you need it. One of the ways we're going to do this is with the Marshall Plan. And since you just have the word Marshall Plan there, if you don't know what the Marshall Plan is, you need to write a definition beside it, okay? The Marshall Plan was produced by George Marshall, who is pictured in your book on page 349. You can see he's in uniform, so he was a military person. But he was appointed the Secretary of State for Truman. And he came up with this idea that if we help Western European countries like France and Germany and Italy and all of these other countries, if we help them rebuild and establish good capitalistic governments and capitalistic economies, then socialism and communism won't look like a good alternative. That's their hope, that we're going to make communism look bad, because we don't want communism. We don't want the government controlling everything. Okay, so that was the Marshall Plan. We'll give them enough money to help them rebuild so that they don't turn to communism. And it worked. It worked for a lot of countries. And then Europe is going to turn around and they're going to do what they can to grow their own environment, their own economies. They're going to create organizations like the European Steel and Coal Community. This community was a group of about 6 different nations that were all had some part to play in the steel and coal industries. And what they did was they worked together to make trade easier, to sell their products to each other, excuse me, to cooperate and get along so that they could make their product, whatever their product, that particular product was, cheaper, more efficiently, better, and they would have a better market for it. So they're helping each other. Then what they did was, when that worked out, and it worked out so well and they did really great, then what they did that is they turned around and turned that into what is today the European Common Market, where they trade free very easily between countries. Remember, in Europe, it's different than it is here, because in Europe, you can go from one country to another like we go from one state to another. So they have to get along a little bit better than we do, for one thing. But anyway, the common market is going to allow them to trade freely between countries and do other things like that, make their economies interdependent so that both countries are stronger. Kind of like our motto has been lately, we're stronger when we work together. Teamwork is always easier when you have that team and everybody has a team spirit. And that's what was happening here in Europe after World War II. Okay, so that is all my notes for today. Tomorrow we're going to move into some of the socialistic tendencies that happened. We're also going to talk a little bit more about the UN and how it works together. So that's all I've got for today. Let me see if I can find my frame. There it is. Okay, y'all have a good day. Make sure you use your notes on your quiz, okay?